Hello, this is your host, Marshall Fields, and welcome to Positive Communication Habits and Thought Process, or PCHAT-P for short. Here we talk about real-life experiences and mindsets that help us navigate difficult conversations, even if we're just talking to ourselves. We can change the world by changing how we talk to it. Hello, hello. I am so excited to have our guest today with us. It's going to be an awesome show. I think you'll be entertained, educated, inspired, encouraged. I have today none other than Dr. Serenity Wright. She's Associate Director for the Social Innovation for the Office of Technology and Commercialization, where she develops and manages new innovation and entrepreneurship programs focused on inclusive innovation and creating equitable access to entrepreneurship and innovation training for underrepresented innovators at UK and in Kentucky. Serenity earned her doctorate from the University of Kentucky in policy, measurement, and evaluation. Her research interests include equity and access to opportunities. Serenity employs a hard science approach through a lens of cultural competency of her theoretical orientation. She is passionate about advocating for those who struggle to access opportunities available for them. She also taught high school for 8 years, served as an associate dean for diversity and international student services at Transylvania University. She worked in city government. She works in city government and served as the Gatton Honors Pathway Director and co-director for diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Gatton College of Business Economics. Some things that folks have said about her, and yes, she'll find out I have been snooping on her social media presence. Brad Zapp from Venture Capital Investing, he said, Serenity is a thoughtful leader who is great at making connections and collaboration. The sign of a true leader is the ability to make people feel welcome and part of a team. And then Haley McCoy, president and CEO at Kentucky Association for Economic Development, said, I'm thrilled our Commonwealth has such a skilled leader as Dr. Serenity Wright, who can identify and address the core issues in these important DEI contexts and guide us toward an effective path forward. And then Sandy Anderson, Director of Academic Advising and Advising Support Services at Lipscomb University, she said, I had the privilege of working on Serenity's Honors Pathway core team and never enjoyed collaboration efforts more because of her dynamic and focused leadership skills. She truly has a heart for helping people, helping guide students not only to the benefit of themselves, but to strive to benefit their communities as well. So with no further ado, I want to welcome Dr. Serenity Wright.
Well, thank you. That was lovely.
So happy to have you here. I really appreciate you taking some time to hang out with me and, just get to know you and talk about some topics that I know our folks will want to hear about. So, how's your day been so far?
So far, so good. Public schools are out today for election day, so it's always kind of a wild card when you're working from home with children.
Oh, yes, I am aware. Before we started recording, because this is a home studio, I walked out of the office and I said, "Now look,
Yeah,
all right, you know, Dad's
hmm
about to be recording."
that's right.
So yeah,
Yeah, pretty sure there was a pillow fight down the hall, and I was like, "We're just gonna close all the doors. Like, I don't care what you do, but don't open a door.
just don't open the door. Keep the door
Whatever you
shut.
do, stay in there."
I want everyone to get to know you a little bit better. I've had the pleasure of working with you a few times and even getting to visit your workplace. But I love to learn about people through what they've posted. So we're going to talk about what you posted. And
All
I'm just going
right.
to show you some pictures. We'll have some dialogue about it, and we'll even unpack some things a little further. But tell me, about this? Are you yoga? What's going on here?
I do not love having my picture taken. I just don't. I don't feel. Some people are just naturally photogenic and they love having their picture taken, and I just don't. But I feel obligated to do, maybe socially bullied is a better word, to do, required milestone photos, right? So that, I don't do annual family photos because I'm just not that with it. But once every 3 to 5 years, we'll do family photos. So this was several years ago, and we were working with a wonderful photographer who just understood, like, dressy, traditional photos is not my vibe. Like, most days I'm like, did I shower today or this week? Or I actually don't know when it
I mean,
happened, right? There's just too many things in life, right? Did the kids get fed? Did I get all my work done? Who's doing laundry, right? There's too many other more important things. So I was like, like, I don't want traditional photos. Like, we can do that because I feel obligated to, but I would really rather do something that's more fun or adventurous, like, we don't get dressed up and go to dinner. Like, we play in the dirt and go for hikes, and we're highly competitive. So she was like, well, why don't you Google some action photos, and how would you like to represent that, right? She said, is it games that you all play? And I said, no, because we can't play them anymore because now we're angry at each other. So it can't be things that we used to do together because we're too competitive for that. So I found some photos of people doing acro yoga, and I just screenshotted a bunch of photos, and then we were actually in Mexico for vacation. Again, this was several years ago, and I was like, okay, there's nobody here that we know. There's no way we can look stupid. We're in Mexico, but we're in the gym, so let's just figure it out. And we crashed more times than we were successful because we didn't actually know how do you get there? Like, I don't know. So based on the pictures, we just tried to figure it out. And this is how we chose to represent who we are as a couple.
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of a photograph. Like, if you catch it, it's there. So, as far as the whole world knows, you are like this super yoga acrobatic when I said, "Oh, is she into yoga?" So, okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
Is that the hubby there?
it is. It is. It's my life partner. You
Cool.
know, I I often compare us to a section out of Winnie the Pooh,
Okay.
um, because there's a piece of a story, and it's a windy day. It's called a blustery day, and Pooh and Piglet are holding hands, and the drawing is from behind, and Piglet has a balloon, and the balloon is whipping around in the wind. And Piglet is so afraid they're going to lose their balloon. And Pooh's like, don't worry about it. It's fine. Like, I'm here. It's okay. And so I often use that as a reference to us. He is Pooh, just going to keep everything together. And I'm the balloon. I'm not even Piglet. I'm the balloon that's up here just like whipping around all crazy and full of chaos, and just kind of doing whatever. And he's just like, it's okay. Just
You,
ride the
you
tide.
know, it's so cool to be balanced, though, right? Everyone, if we all had the same personality, then we would all go crazy at the same time.
Yes.
My wife and I, we kind of describe it as we take turns being crazy, and we're crazy for different reasons. Like what
That's
I'm
right.
doing right now, being on screen, this would freak her out. Like she would absolutely freak out. She's not one of those people who's, comfortable being in front of, the camera or whatever. Me, on the other hand, there will be times where just the daily task associated with living, I'm just like, oh, this is a lot.
Yeah.
You know, this is
Yes.
this is a whole lot, and so we balance each other. So I definitely get that. She would probably say I'm Tigger, and she would be between Pooh and Piglet for sure. So yeah, awesome.
I love it.
So let's talk about what's going on here.
So my sister, I'm the oldest of four, and my youngest sister is 14 years younger than I am. And she won a campus award at the University of Kentucky. She also works at the university. All four siblings are currently employed by the University of Kentucky.
Nepotism.
That's right. That's right. And she won the staff award. So that group photo that she's in are all the nominees for the staff award, but she won the award out of all of the nominees.
Wow.
And I'm so incredibly proud of who she is. And I'm fascinated by the environments in which we've been professionally raised, right? As someone who really kind of doubles down on the equity piece and the access piece, while trying to figure out who I am as a professional, as a person in the professional space, right? The things that I struggle with are not the same as the things that she has struggled with. The areas that I found my strengths are things that she doesn't have to deal with. So in a lot of ways, I am encouraged by the ways in which she's been allowed to shine as a biracial female in the workplace in ways that I did not feel like I could, while also being like, how else you gonna cut your teeth? Like, if everybody's just so freaking appreciative of you, what are you doing? Like, how are you learning anything? You're not growing. You're not being challenged. She's like,
Where's your adversity, right? Where's your
where have you struggled? What? But yeah, I'm so very proud of her in the work that she's done. But that's her with the two of us.
Awesome. Yeah, that's got to be cool to just have, that type of moment to share with her. I'm certain it took a lot of work to get there, but I loved your post and how you pointed out the fact that when she had the opportunity to speak and accept the award, she actually pointed back to people who were doing work in the community and putting focus on women and using that platform to bring more attention to the good work that got her there in the first place. So.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of leading with love and leading with gratitude. And so to see her model that, right, in a ballroom full of people, and to really stay grounded in the humility of the work, right? Nobody gets anywhere alone, right? So yes, she was the award winner, but she didn't get there by herself. So to watch her model that gratitude and to lead from that space and take advantage of the moment to model that,
That's powerful.
Yeah, it was really cool.
So, speaking of leading, we have another image here, and I had to throw some text in because I loved everything about this post. There are a lot of buzzwords going around these days, but when I saw humanize, I said, "Oh, people need to see this." So tell me what's going on in this photo.
Yeah, so I had the amazing opportunity to speak as part of the Good Business Summit in Louisville. This was really a facilitated conversation between myself and Winnie about equity work, right? And our different focus areas inside of that and how we do that. And not from a philosophical standpoint. This wasn't about making the case. It was about tools, right? And really, how do you do it? And I'm a big fan of sharing practical tips and tricks and next steps and things that you can actually do to move forward, as opposed to just thinking about it, right? I don't want, yes, I want you to leave thinking about it, but I don't want that to be the only thing you can do, right? I want you to be able to do something with your thoughts when you have them. The biggest takeaway for us was in this piece about humanizing the work that we do, especially when it comes to things related to equity or expanding access. It's so easy to forget, it's so easy to get caught up in being overwhelmed by everything that has to be done, or being overwhelmed by the weight of what you're trying to do, or not even knowing where to start, right? Sometimes we can't even realize who we're leaving out, who we're not thinking about, where the gaps are, right? And when we do that, and when we find comfort, in the work, we forget about the people we're impacting. So if we don't stay uncomfortable, if we don't stay regularly challenging ourselves to think through, who am I forgetting? Who cannot access this resource? Who cannot, because they can't see it, because it's not available to them, because they don't know how to navigate, whatever it is. When we forget that, we dehumanize the work, and it just becomes work. It just becomes tasks. If we stay people-centered, if we stay focused on the human element, then that work becomes tangible. It becomes empathetic. It becomes compassionate. It becomes something more than work, and it becomes closer to vocation, right? How am I really going to change and impact my space, and what do I want that to look like? So that's what that was about.
Well, you should probably find something to do that you're passionate about, because it sounds like this is kind of a willy-nilly thing for you. Just giving some free career advice
That's
here,
right.
just
That's
maybe
right.
something that you really feel and can advocate for. Do with it what you will. I'm, you know,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
we're going to unpack this a bit. Okay. This was an article I came across, and I read the whole thing, and I got to learn even more about you. But this word of, covering, to really understand that, embrace it, I think it's a nice segue from where you were just talking about humanizing the work. Share a little bit about this article.
Anytime I speak anywhere, I end with some signature taglines. One of them is "Do it scared," and this was scary. I know as a society we tend to operate from a place of people love to talk about themselves. I don't love to talk about myself. It actually makes me very uncomfortable. So to agree to do this was me trying to practice what I preach and being scared. And it stemmed from a place of unwavering trust in Josh Miller, who wrote the article from our conversation. And I think trust is misapplied a lot in the professional workspace, and we remove the weight of the duality in trust, right? Because trust is more than just, do I trust you to do the work? It's, do I trust that I can show up as a mom, as an unclean mom, with chaos in the background? I don't know if you heard the screaming about 5 minutes ago, as clearly we opened the door. I asked them to not open. You know, do I trust that I can take a call from the car and not be judged because I'm in transit with my kids, because I'm trying to integrate work and life? Do I trust that I can show up in jeans or sweatpants and not be seen, and have that not impact who I am as a professional, right? Do I trust that I can make a mistake and forget to send the calendar invite, which I do once a month, where I only invite myself to the meeting, right? Like, you know, these trust is about vulnerability and knowing that we're going to have support regardless of what we do. And it takes real work to get there. So I have unwavering trust in Josh, who facilitated this conversation. And it stemmed from a light bulb moment that I had with my 11-year-old. I'm not from here. I wasn't raised here. I was raised in Indonesia. I'm Chinese Indonesian, and that part of me is very important to me. It's very important to my children. And you know, if you read the article, there's a piece in there about me uncovering being an ESL, an English as a second language learner. And it took my son to identify that for me, and for me to understand why there are so many things that, particularly related to emotions, that I can't communicate. They don't translate from one language to another, right? Or why I struggled so hard in academic writing to apply what I learned as opposed to just regurgitating what I learned. But it really took trust from a leader, empathy and compassion. And that doesn't mean it's all warm fuzzy, right? That it was always perfect. But the leadership that I was talking about in this article, you know, there were challenges and there were disagreements, but they were respectful. They always stemmed from a place of how do I become better? Even when I messed it up, I was never scared to say, this is what happened. I was never scared to say, I don't know what to do, but found myself running to this leadership to say, like, this has never happened to me. I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know how to frame the conversation, right? And to be told, like, don't worry about it. Just start talking. We'll figure it out. And
I think,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just in doing that, right? And having that modeled for me, it allowed me to uncover different parts of me and to become proud of these elements that I not just hadn't exposed before, but hadn't even internalized or acknowledged before.
I love the part where you talk about being in the classroom, and you know, you said you came in naked and then quickly put on a winter parka. And so I just want to paraphrase my understanding, and you let me know if I'm hitting the mark. But oftentimes, as kids and sometimes as adults, we feel comfortable in our skin. We feel open, and so we enter situations open, ready to learn. Like you started a new workplace, you haven't figured out all the dirty secrets or where the bodies are buried, and so you're just like this open book. Yes, this is me. Let's go. And then things happen. Something's said. Something occurs, and then you cover up, you close off, because now you realize there's not a level of psychological safety, so you don't feel vulnerable. Is that what you were saying in that? And if not, please.
No, absolutely, right? We entered, and again, I think it stems from trust, right? Especially in a work environment, because if it's a new job, you picked me. You picked me, right? So I'm so excited. Yeah, I might be nervous, right? But it's this anxious excitement where you can't wait, even when you don't know exactly what you'll be doing, or maybe you know exactly what you will be doing. It doesn't matter. What matters is we feel like we feel safe. We enter that space feeling safe because there's an element of trust because you picked me. So therefore we're baselining from this place of mutual trust and respect, right? And then like you said, something gets said and somebody goes, "Oh, don't take it so personally." Or somebody says, "Oh, that's just Marshall. He didn't mean it that way. You'll get to know him." Or, "Oh, that's just Serenity. She's always been like that."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excuses to stay
And
the same.
yes, and we, depending on our lived experience, it either becomes this slow application of like socks, shorts, pants, or we go straight from "I am here" to parka. And that's what happened for me. And
Mm-hmm.
I never took it off again until very recently in the professional space.
So, just in thinking about, what was the catalyst for that? You talk about how, at first you felt like you were so welcomed and, embraced. You were this new international student. You're coming out. Oh wow, and then there was something that your teacher said to you, or there had been a series of things that were said to you. What were those?
It was grounded in, most of the side comments were grounded in readings, right? In a shared experience. In eighth grade, you all read Of Mice and Men. Oh, well, you didn't. And then the
Mm,
conversation would continue. Well, remember last year when you all read Grapes of Wrath? Well, did you read? You didn't. Right? It was this series of shared experiences, academic shared experiences, and the clear distinction of everybody else, right? The calling out by the teacher that everybody else has this shared experience except this one, right? It's like being in the room and the spotlight is only on you, right? It's not, which is not the same as being the only one in the dark. You can hide in the dark. You
mm,
can cry in the dark. You can be uncomfortable in the dark. When the
yeah.
spotlight is only on you, there's nowhere to hide. There's
And
nowhere to cry.
and there's also the fact that the spotlight contextually could be a good thing. However, the way that it's being shown, in certain situations such as this one, is you're different, which saying you're different can translate to you don't belong here. You're not one of us. You're an outsider. And, you add to that, if there are certain academic struggles or differences in translating or, traversing the way your brain thinks into a new language and a new dialect, let's shine a spotlight on those struggles or perceived struggles. So I think that's so important for all of us, whether you're a business owner, operator, teacher, instructor, professional, in the workplace or in home, to just understand how our words can create this sense of welcome, belonging, and acceptance, or a sense of you're not one of us, you're being ostracized, you're different. And just the tone by which it's said, it's not you're a good different, it's a you're different. And I think folks should really read this article, because as much as we've talked about it, I think there's still so much that folks can gain from it. So I just wanted to shout that out, because there was a lot of good things in there, and I've even had to, for myself, be very conscious of the words that I say, and then also who I'm talking to, because it's so easy not to take into consideration how your words are impacting someone else. That's my favorite thing to talk about, because I do believe that you can change the world by changing how you talk to it. And so I really appreciated this, and it made me think, just thinking about your ethnic background, your race background, it made me think of a movie, and how sometimes there are unnecessary lines of division that are drawn, mostly from a place of ignorance. But I just wanted to show it real quick and get your thoughts.
We want to have children someday.
But what will they be? They won't be white, and they won't be Oriental. They'll be some kind of half-breed, and they won't be accepted by either side.
They'll be American. Linda's American. I'm American.
You're an American citizen. You're not really an American.
Bruce.
You'd better put a Band-Aid on that cut, Mr. Lee.
Bruce. Bruce.
Like the way people can frivolously say things that will impact you, and you could tell she wanted, oh, you better put a cut. The cut on his hand is the last thing that we should probably address in this situation. Just me. But her level of awareness, her level of sensitivity to the weight of the words that she just said, wow.
We all do it, right? We all say something we didn't mean, right? Or it didn't come out like we meant it, or we didn't realize the impact it had, and that was not our intent. And it's just so hard. I have friends that have a podcast, Where Are You Really From? And it talks about this exact thing, and all the ways that we use difference as a dividing factor as opposed to a unifying factor, right? When I mentor my staff, or even when I teach students, I tell them, any setting you're in and you're having a conversation with a new person, find out how you're different. Find out what makes them unique. That is what you will remember about that person, right? Because it is different, because it is a unique factor about them. But where we tend to find commonalities to make it more comfortable, instead, I challenge to find the difference, find the uniqueness, because that's where we learn to grow in respect for difference. Not so that we never say things like that's in that clip, which is exactly where I knew you were going. Like, as soon as you said there's a movie clip, I was like, it's going to be one of two things. But so that we are more aware of the intent to do it. So then maybe we will do it one less time, right? And it's nobody is perfect. Nobody is without bias. Nobody is without mistakes. So it's not about never doing it again. It's about being empathetic when it does happen, to know really how to reach out and come at it from a place of compassion and care when you work to rebuild that relationship, right? Or to be able to be an advocate enough that when you hear somebody else do it, you go, hey, you may not think about it this way, but let me tell you about an experience I had, right? And I think so often the thing that makes anything related to equity work so hard is it so often get talked about from a binary perspective. You either do it or you don't. You're either biased or you're not. You're either racist or you're not. Like, that's not how it works, right? Like, that is not acknowledging the humanness of it, right? My story is not your story. We probably have shared experiences because we have similarities, but even if we were exactly the same, our stories would not be the same. Our lived experiences are not the same, right? And so it's never about knowing all you can know about everybody so that we all create the one shared experience and we all have the one shared experience. Like, how boring would life be like that, right? But it's about humanizing every conversation so that I'm focused on you as the person and not just trying to get through the networking event or figuring out how you can help me professionally or figuring out, whatever the agenda is in my head, right? When I'm focused on you as a person, as a friend, as a colleague, then we come to respect each other through our differences, because of our differences, and highlight those differences as like, dude, this is the guy. Like, he is such an advocate and a friend for me. And we have these really deep, difficult conversations about topics that most people run from. Right? But it came from a place of like, hey, let's figure this out. Who are you? What are you interested in? Right? I think your first question to me was, what are you passionate about? And that was a year ago.
Yeah.
Because we focused on each other, not literally not anything else other than the care and compassion for the person on the other side. And it just gets forgotten.
Yeah. Like, human beings innately are interesting. You can take what someone would potentially find as mundane or boring, and if you look close enough, if you listen long enough, you will find a whole universe of things that could probably hold your attention. And I think that's how I try to approach every conversation. Stay curious. Simon Sinek had a quote. He said, good leaders always stay more curious than judgmental. And I think oftentimes when people begin a conversation, they begin it from a standpoint of preconceived notions. They're listening to hear validation or confirmation of what they already thought. And I've even seen it on people's faces when they start to have this argument of what you're saying, of how you feel or how you perceive a situation against how they think you should, or how they think you really do, or how they view you. They fight for their preconceived notion or version of what you should say or how you should feel. And that in and of itself destroys the possibility of a conversation that will yield any type of genuine fruit. So I'm with you 100% on that. And I find it more interesting when you can have conversations through a blank canvas, and it's like, hey, I'm listening to you. Here's a paintbrush. Dip into your heart, dip into your brain. What's going to hit the canvas? What's this going to look like when it's all over with? And that
Yeah.
leads me to some general questions that I have, because after we go through our general questions, which I'm excited to hear your responses, then we're going to spin the wheel. Okay. We are
Okay.
going to spin
Very
the
excited
wheel
about the
of
wheel.
time. Oh boy, it's going to be good. I promise you. I promise you. You guys are going to love it. So, first general question. Your research focuses on the intersection of social justice and leadership. How can leaders promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in their own organizations and communities?
It has to be embedded and it has to be intentional. Um, I my work focuses on policies and processes, right? So how are we, or how have we created infrastructures that by design make it harder for some to access, right? And that can be because it's a formal structure in policy and process or an informal structure and it's built in culture, right? Inside every organization, you can identify anybody who works for that organization can identify that person will never get promoted, that person will never get promoted. But you have to ask yourself as a company, as an organization, why is that? Right? And what happened along the way that we set up that person or out group of people to fail? Because ultimately that's what we've done, right? So from a leadership standpoint, it's about staying uncomfortable and building in not just the one-time strategic plan where you talk about some goals and outcomes and then the action items. And then by the time you're done with the 18-month process to build the 5-year strategic plan, so you're really already 2 years in, everything after that becomes performative, right? It's about really taking the time, which may take 18 months to 2 years at the beginning, to really identify some critical holes. Who needs mentorship? How are we identifying our talent inside of the organization? How are we supporting leaders to grow, right? How are we, I'm a big fan of grow and let go. So if we're not operating from a space of we should be building such strong leaders that other companies want to recruit them, we're doing them a disservice. We want them to stay. We should be building the retention model in the company culture so that they stay. But we want them to be so good that they are highly sought after. How do we do that? How do we make that case? How do we make that strong? So for me, from a leadership perspective, it's about policy and processes, not programming and events. Those can come. Those are support elements. Those are wraparound support elements. But the policy and processes have to be equitable.
So, as an educator, how do you incorporate principles of social justice into your teaching? Like, what advice do you have for other educators who are interested in doing the same? Is it the same answer?
This is my favorite part. This is the cheat question, right? Because the intersection of everything is people, right? So if we're not focused on the intersectionality of every industry with the community so that we're creating people-centered, future-focused communities, everything dissolves. Nothing is sustainable, right? So it doesn't matter if you're in corporate finance, investment banking, nonprofit sector. The intersection of all those things is still the people inside of our communities, right? And it actually, people always want to talk about make the business case for diversity. Cool. We can do that and we can cite those numbers. But at the end of the day, it's very basic, right? If people aren't thriving, they cannot invest in the economy. They can't buy things. They can't shop for things. They can't go anywhere. They can't contribute, right? So at the end of the day, it's really basic economics, right? And making sure that everybody within our communities can thrive. And the only way they can do that is if they can access everything that they need, right? So when I teach about it, or when I support faculty who teach about it, it doesn't necessarily matter because I'm just looking for the lens of the applied major. So if we're in public health, we're talking about it from a perspective of integrated community maps around social determinants of health, right? How are people making money? Do they have jobs? Do they have transportation? Can they access healthy foods? Do they have access to clean water, safe and affordable housing? All of these pieces that contribute to health outcomes. That's what we're talking about. That's how we talk about social justice through the public health lens. If we're talking about it in business, we're talking about segments of entrepreneurs and investment where they need extra supports to thrive inside of business. So how are our small businesses getting access to loans? How are we growing the number of female founders and ethnic minority founders for startup companies? How are we being intentional about how we elevate those companies in those mixed teams, right? If we're looking at it from arts and sciences, right? How are we looking at whether it's artists that get into mainstream installations? That's the word I was looking for. Mainstream installations, right? And what are their backgrounds? Who are they coming from? What are they talking about, right? Maybe they're talking about mental health and it's manifesting through images of the impact of safety in schools. Maybe it's about recycled art to make a statement of purpose through what we wear and what we choose to accessorize with. Maybe it's a company like Anshul out of Louisville who works in sustainable clothing, but they use, and sustainable fashion, textiles, but they use women in India who have been part of the sex trafficking industry and are really working to break the generational gap in poverty and in sex working by employing these women intentionally, right? That's social justice. Maybe it's New Frontier out of Moorhead and their focus on circular denim for a healthier planet while also employing people out of Eastern Kentucky and generating, revitalizing the economy in Eastern Kentucky by keeping their headquarters there, right? That is social justice and economic development. So as an educator, it doesn't matter what the topic area is. At the end of the day, it's about people-centered, future-focused communities. And we, humans, every human, you, me, and the white guy downstairs, we all sit at that intersection, and we have to be thought of from those are three very different lenses by companies to consider how do we make sure we're all thriving so those businesses thrive. When the communities aren't thriving, the people in the communities aren't thriving, the businesses don't thrive.
Speaking of the people, when it comes to students, what do you think are some of the most pressing issues that students face?
Woof. I don't know if we have time for all of that.
Just give me like the top 3 or 4 that come into your mind.
I do think mental health is a huge struggle. I think I'm going to put accountability and responsibility in the same bucket. I do think young people struggle with this, right? And I genuinely don't believe they're mentally developed enough to understand the consequences and to make the right choice, right? Like, yes, I want to go play with my friends and I want to get good grades. I may or may not be mature enough at 17, 18, 19 to know which one should take priority and be able to do that over and over and over again without then sacrificing my mental health in the process, right? Most adults aren't good at balance, but we want students to be able to balance these insane weights of work and school and volunteer and be a holistic, well-rounded person, and you should also read for fun, and you should be involved in every student organization, and you should be a leader, and you should, like, wow. It's insanity.
That's all the way real.
Right? So mental health, accountability and responsibility, and then the balance, I think there's a real struggle in identity. But I mean that from a place of social pressure. Who am I supposed to be?
So the pressure.
I often tell people 100%, right? Exactly. There's a pressure to fit, right? So I often tell people, I'm not the mom, I'm not the parent I want to be. I want to be the fun mom. I want to be the mom that doesn't care about grades, or maybe I do care about grades, but I also know that they can stay up late at night and it'll be fine. Maybe I don't want to force them to eat a new vegetable every week. Maybe I can't afford to give them a vegetable every week, right? I am not the mom I want to be. I am the mom I think they need me to be. And that's hard. Because I don't ever say, because I told you so. I don't ever say just because. We always have the conversation. And it's because of these three things. Because I worry about their mental health. I need them to know I am a safe space regardless of what happens. It's because I'm worried about accountability and responsibility. I need them to understand there are consequences when they choose. And that's fine that they made a choice, but it better be an informed choice, and they better be prepared for the consequence when they do that. Right? And that is everything from her refusing to wear her cleats last night at the ball field, and then she stepped on a rock, and I went, I don't want to hear it. I told you to put your shoes on.
You chose this.
To them,
you chose this.
I'm just saying. To what happens to them 10 years from now if they cheat on a paper, right? And there's academic integrity involved and they get a 0 in the class and now they have to repeat. And that's a $3,600 consequence in college, right? I do it because I'm worried about that accountability and responsibility. I do it because my son has long hair and he loves his long hair. And then he said to me, am I going to get bullied in middle school? And I immediately said, yep, you are. But it doesn't matter. If you want your long hair, keep it. What matters is, can you come and talk to us about it? What matters is, does it make you happy? Does it bring you joy? How do we support you in that? What matters is, why do you feel obligated to cut your hair, or do you? Right? I worry about the pressure, both for him and especially for her, to fit in. I can remember my grandmother asking a boyfriend in a previous life, doesn't it bother you that she only wears wrinkled sweats? Like, doesn't that bother you? Like, wouldn't you like her to wear something else? And he was like, no.
So basically, she's using him to push her own agenda, basically.
100%, right? She would also, when I was pregnant, she would say things like, I love how girls these days are not worried about their curves. And, in my day, we had to hide that we were pregnant and these giant moo-moos, but you all are just out there. And I was like, Grandma, I am 5'1". There is nothing on this planet that is going to hide this belly on a 5'1" body. Like, that's just not happening. It's out here whether I want it to be or not, right? But I don't feel pressure to dress a certain way in my free time. I do at work, but that's a different conversation. That's about armor, right? And the armor that I need. But I worry about that. for my kids, and I want them to be able to own that. So those are my three things.
I mean, they're great three things, and I have, I have four. I always claim them like I don't have a wife, but I have, we have four kids, and our three daughters who are still in the house. I just want to let you know that pretty much everything that you said, from the hair to the clothing to the pressure to fit in, I've seen it in all of them at different ages, from 10 to 15 to, I'm sorry, 11. She would kill me if I took away that year, I tell you. But from
Yep.
11 to 15 to 19, I've seen it, and it's different for each of them, but they still have to go through that, and they're still discovering self. I am still discovering self. There are new parts of my personality and purpose that still uncover, and I love it. I love the journey. And one of the life lessons that I think I've kind of heard in what you were saying, and what I try to use, is I don't want to make things easier for my kids. I want to make them stronger so that those things that come at them are easier to deal with. But the world is going to be the world, and if we seek to shelter them from the struggle, how can they ever develop the skill set, the mental fortitude, the ability to survive, and to just realistically expect that, hey, this is going to be a challenge. How bad do you want it? If you want it bad enough, develop whatever it takes for you, whether it be network, friends, funds, however. So I love that. I love that. So, you've obviously proven yourself to be somewhat a professional. And I mean, I just feel weird if I didn't take advantage of you while you're here, while I have you on screen. Everybody's watching, so you're not going to say no. Um, Actually, no, you would, because you're that type of person to have that strength and not be bullied. But I just I just wanted to talk about a quote, and then I'm going to ask you for some. I'm going to ask you for some free advice on the spot. Okay, so this quote that you shared on Facebook from John Steinbeck, which ironically you've already mentioned some of the books that he's written. Grapes of Wrath, of Mice and Men. But as you look at this quote, it is the nature of man to rise to greatness when greatness is expected of him. So as we process that, just a question, okay? How do we continually expect greatness while at the same time not putting unrealistic demands and pressure on those we're trying to develop, whether a parent, teacher, student, business owner? How do we do that?
Because greatness is not the same. My very first real boss, like not a summer job, my very first real boss, Rob Akers, said this my very first year of teaching, as we worked as a team to figure out how to make sure all students were achieving. I have told my kids this, and I live by this. It's not about whether you get an A or a C. It's about whether or not I know you tried your hardest. And you said something a minute ago in your response to that last question about it being so hard, and you want them to be, you want your daughters to be able to respond. And for me, that is the greatness. I don't know. The greatness is in knowing I don't have to, I get to. And I want them to always choose to be better. I want them to always choose to work harder. But I have to help them build the skill set, the toolbox to do that. And again, it comes back to the individual, right? And when I work with students, I work really hard with my students for them to quit comparing themselves to others. And they'll joke and they'll tell you that I spend a lot of time going, you're not special. You're not special. You have not done anything special yet. All you've done is everything else your peers have done. They joined a club, you joined a club. You became a leader, they became a leader. They got a job, you got a job. And we build these resumes of life based on what everybody else is doing around us as opposed to what we were meant to do. Nothing kills my spirit faster than to be told to just maintain the status quo. I am innately driven to want to know more, to want to be better. And that's hard, and that's exhausting. But when I say I do it scared and I try and model that, when I say I'm just trying to be the parent I think my kids need, not the one I want to be, I model that through this, right? Through figuring out, and we're coming right back around to humanizing the work. Who are they? And can I find the light that's inside of them and help it burn brighter? Right? And as leaders, as parents, as friends, the message isn't any different. Can you find the light and help it burn brighter? My greatness may not be your greatness. And it was never meant to be. My greatness is only my path and my journey. And that's my light to share with the world. My purpose is to fan your flame. And that will be our shared greatness. But greatness for you and greatness for me are different. Our shared greatness is fanning the flame for each other.
Wow. So when I hear you talk, and for everyone who's listening, or if you're watching, I told you would be encouraged and inspired. So don't say I never gave you anything. But just when I hear you talk, I think you just have this bedrock of like mental innovation. I was on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I saw this job that I think you would be perfect for. It's a STEP Social Innovation Coordinator. I think you'd be perfect for that job.
That's right. Hire me.
And I'm kidding. That's actually a position you're looking to fill right now, isn't it?
It is. But I think it's the perfect follow-up to this conversation, right? I am looking to help somebody find their greatness while doing good in the world. And that, like, again, this is me modeling that, right? I want to help you find your spot. I want to help somebody grow personally and professionally. I want somebody who wants to be reminded of what curiosity is and wants to build skills about how to think differently and to be professionally creative while doing something good in the world. If those are the things you want, then hire me to be your supervisor. Pick me.
Professionally creative. I'll tell you what, there have been some nuggets dropped, I tell you. All right, so be professionally creative with me, because this is where I'm selfishly going to seek some free advice. You may or may not know that I own a business called PChatP. And, it's an acronym for positive communication habits and thought process. And so we do shows like this one, but what we're also starting to do is branch off and have a clothing line. And, we're calling it clothing for a cause, because essentially this clothing has messages on it, as well as QR codes that if people scan them, it will lead them to a discounted site that will give people discounted access to either buy clothing that has messages to help put the messages out in the world, but it also goes to a landing page that will give discounted access to the Freedom from Racism training using Communication to Overcome Race, which is an online training program. Now that I've said all that, and you can kind of see some of the images, how would you recommend going about launching this, or any thoughts come to your head?
I love the intent and the idea. My question would be, have you done customer discovery around having both things on the design, right? Because I'm almost inclined to say, I wonder if people would be more curious to purchase and scan if the QR code was the only thing there, right? So, we talk a lot about customer discovery as part of startups to really figure out what's going to drive the customer to purchase, or what is going to drive support for the beneficiary. So what are clients telling you, right? Ones who have gone through the training. Do they want a shirt? Would they want the quote and the QR code, just the QR code? How would they like to share the message? Or what do they need to purchase so that they could share the message, right? If they're interested in sharing, what does the swag item look like? Is it a shirt? Is it a tumbler? What is it that people need? I'm personally, because I'm forever cold, drawn to the sweatshirt. I'm like, what's that one? I need warmer items. And then, everything is about the marketing presence and the social media presence, and how the campaign goes out and what the message is that you're trying to communicate. I actually think an entrepreneur friend of mine does this really well. Her name's Mandy Ralston, but she has a platform for applied behavior analytics. But the ways in which she promotes it provokes curiosity, right? And that's what you want to do. You don't want to give it all away. You want to make it seductive. You want to provoke, right? You want people to go, what is that? Yeah, I'll scan that. Yeah, I'll click that. Yes, I'll wear that, right? So advice one would be, do you know what the customer wants, right? What does it look like? What do they need? What do they want? And then in terms of how do you launch it, I'm inclined to think that customer discovery will tell you how to do it. But even if it doesn't, start from a place of what's going to provoke a response. What is going to make it alluring to somebody to want to click the next button?
Nice. Free advice on the spot. You heard it here first. Thank you.
That's right.
I appreciate it. I love it. Okay. Serenity. Dr. Wright. Are you ready to spin the wheel? Now, just to explain for the folks at home, we're about to spin a wheel, and we have no idea what it's going to land on. But whatever it lands on, I do have a set of questions that are both thought-provoking and probably not the easiest to answer. And so we've got about 17 minutes left, so I'm going to have to move fast. And if you can, it will be hard, but do your best to keep your responses as succinct as possible, because I want to get through as many questions as I can. So no pressure at all. But here we go. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. And you're going to tell me when to stop. So the wheel is going to start spinning now.
Stop.
Labor. All righty, folks. It's going to be a labor of love as we approach the labor questions today. All righty.
And we're not talking about childbirth, right? Like we're talking about workforce.
Yes, we're talking about the
just checking.
workforce. I love it.
Okay.
No, hey, you better clarify or your answers could be very weird.
Yeah.
Okay. First question, rapid response. Here we go. First question. Let's start by discussing the importance of labor in context of social innovation and entrepreneurship. How does labor contribute to driving positive social change?
I think it's the other way around. Positive social change will drive labor.
Done. Number 2, when it comes to social innovation, how do you think entrepreneurs can create employment opportunities that promote fair labor practices and empower individuals in underserved communities?
Yep. Be intentional, right? Don't just always use the same recruiting tools or recruiting practices you've done before. How can you intentionally reach out to groups who have not historically or traditionally applied for jobs with your company? What are the other pieces? What are the actual qualifications that you need, right? So many times we list arbitrary conversations because we think that is needed. Is an advanced degree truly needed, or do you need somebody with experience? Don't list a master's degree if they don't actually need a master's degree, because if this is, well, that's, you said be succinct. Anyway, those are my 2 pieces.
Nice. All right, number 3, we often hear about the concept of decent work. Can you explain what it means and share some examples of social entrepreneurs have incorporated decent work principles into their initiatives?
Okay, so I will use a large for-profit company, because I think often it's assumed, oh, nonprofits do this, they're more flexible. You know, there's some stereotypes and assumptions that we make about work and that it's harder to do in corporate spaces. But decent work is about trust and respect for the employee while acknowledging like life is hard, right? So can you offer a 4-day work week? Can you offer a hybrid environment for working parents, single working parents, so that they don't have to stress when kids are off school for election day or a weather day, right? Can you offer unlimited time off under the work hard, play hard mentality? But none of the decent work things actually work if there aren't good policies and processes and accountability in place inside of a strong work culture, right? So the other decent piece to this, other than just things that can be done, are how are we building up our people? Are we working through those issues where somebody said, oh, don't take that personally? Are we working through the issues where somebody truly is upset and something has happened? Do we know who our people are outside of the workspace and what they're bringing into the workspace? Do we know that they love to run? Do we know that they love to base jump? Maybe they only sit at home and play video games and they don't actually interact with anybody outside of an online platform, right? So there's 2 sides for me from a social innovation standpoint related to decent work. One is in the policies, processes, the functional things the company can do. The other is the heartthrob of the company itself and how that is serving the decency and the decent work of the people.
What are some notable examples of social innovation initiatives that have successfully addressed labor rights or improved working conditions, particularly in marginalized or vulnerable communities?
I do think the massive shift towards hybrid work has benefited many marginalized communities. Because I do think it does allow for more flexibility. Now, is it completely inclusive? No, absolutely not. Right? Is it better? Yes. I also think there is a paradigm shift, not just in social innovation, but in industry across the board related to the qualification piece and what do we actually need to get the job done, right? I think one of the greatest assets to there being this socialized argument around a lack of enough employees is really trying to figure out what do I need to do to get employees in the door and to keep them here. And companies are willing to make that work. Specifically from a social innovation standpoint, companies that are really looking to disrupt generational gaps or issues. I mentioned Anshul earlier, New Frontier earlier, but there's larger corporate companies across the board. Everything from, P&G's got a social impact arm and an innovation arm that really does work to highlight and enhance and advance historically marginalized entrepreneurs through their R&D section, while also serving, right, and creating philanthropic output in those communities as well. But there's also major investment companies, TZP, Middle Ground Capital, places where they're focused on lower to mid-market companies to really build them up. Or Kinetic Ventures, you mentioned Brad Zapp earlier. They have a managing partner who focuses on female founders and founders from diverse backgrounds or that are looking to serve diverse populations. Being intentional about, well, let's not just see who, falls out in the pool, but I'm going to go find them. They're there, right? They're there. It's not that we don't exist. We're there, but somebody needs to turn a positive spotlight on us. And I think that is happening, and it's getting more attention and more attention.
Last question. I'd love to hear your thoughts on ethical considerations social entrepreneurs should keep in mind when it comes to labor practices. I'm going to twist that. How can they prioritize worker well-being while building sustainable and successful ventures?
Look, the purpose of any business is to make money. Full stop. Bottom line. For profit, not for profit. The purpose of any business is to make money. Now, if you're a not for profit, you can't keep it. You got to give it back, right? So, how do you, and I think this goes to the great breakup or the quiet quitting or, whatever catchphrase we want to call it, right? But there's a real issue around the inability to do life, to live, right? And we've created this society where you're not working hard if you're not busy. And people often talk about it as work-life balance. I don't actually believe in balance. If we talk about it as balance, I am always going to fail. I'm always going to fail. I'm never going to meet that. I talk about it as integration. And in figuring out how to make it work for me has given my brain freedom to go, okay, it's 3:30, but I also have to get my kid to gymnastics. Am I stressed about having to take that 45 minutes to and from work to do that? Absolutely not. But that's a culture that's been created through trust and respect and authenticity, where my team supports and encourages that of yeah, go take your kid to gymnastics because we're not worried about that 45 minutes. So how do you create that worker mental health and well-being? One, it's about trust and respect. Start there. 2, it's in acknowledging busy is not better, right? What do we need to do to be effective, to make money, to be a thriving business? 3, what are we doing that just creates busyness? Because every company does it. So what are we doing to just create busyness that we can get rid of for our people? Because frankly, they're busy enough trying to do their job. So if we let them do it, everybody's happier without creating this other chaos to look busier to the outside world. So now we're back to the thing about students, right? Accountability and responsibility, mental health, and a societal fit that we try and apply as a company as well.
Well said. You have no place for busyness in your business. All right. So
No.
those are some hard-hitting questions. I love your answers. I appreciate it. I think there's a lot of value that they bring. And so we kind of began talking about you. I wanted everybody to get to know you. And then we talked about business and all the ways that intellectually you could contribute to the discussion, which, bam, honestly, I probably could have just sent this to you and said, record yourself saying this stuff, and it would have been just as good because, you just have that skill set. It's true. Own it, accept it. It's yours.
No.
Take it. I'm not taking it back. It's yours. So I want to end on a more personal note, okay? And we've got 5 minutes. More personal note.
Okay.
So here we go. Rapid fire again. First question. Favorite color or curse word? Give me one.
Blue, and am I allowed to say it?
Say it.
I believe fuck is a noun, a verb, an adjective, I
This
use
is
it
a
for all
family
things.
show. I am shocked and appalled. This is a family show.
I believe it can be used for all things, to the point where my smallest gremlin said to me the other day, I'm really proud of you. I haven't heard you yell that in a long time. And I thought, I think I'm winning as a parent. This is my moment to shine.
That's called a growth indicator, ma'am. That's called a growth indicator. All right, number 2. You can either give me your favorite movie or your favorite song.
Oh. I can't do it. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But I will say, because I love lots of things, so I don't have a favorite song. However, I do think I missed my calling. I definitely should have been an 80s rock star. Tiffany, Madonna, Serenity. That was like the ultimate trilogy waiting to happen. And we just missed the boat.
You won't hear me argue with you. All right, number 3. Biggest pet peeve.
Oh, gosh. Okay, this is complicated. I don't love it when I believe firmly in sharing a meal with anybody, right? I believe there's a lot of humanizing in sharing a meal. However, I don't love it if you start a sentence to me and then take the bite and I have to wait for you to finish chewing before you finish the sentence. So if you're like, hey, Serenity, what do you think about bite? I've already forgotten you said my name. Like, my brain has left and chased 18 other squirrels, and then you're like, so what did you think about that? Well, I quit listening to you because you were eating.
I love that. You didn't answer my question, but I love it. No, you did.
That is my pet
So-
peeve. It's just a very complicated one because it's non-binary. I can love to share a meal
Gotcha.
with you while also not wanting you to talk to me in between.
Okay. And this is what I got confused with. That's why I said that. Number 4 is favorite meal to eat or to prepare.
Oh, I love to cook anything I don't have to decide on. So if somebody said, if my family or friends, anybody says, if you'll just cook these 5 things, I'm happy to do that. I don't like the decision making process in cooking. So I love to cook anything I don't have to pick. My favorite food is French fries.
Nice. Number 5,
I,
socially awkward moment or hidden
all
talent.
of them. I am the most socially awkward human there ever was.
I love it. All of them. That is your final answer. All right. What is the greatest lesson that you've learned?
Um, in my doctoral program, my chair looked at me one day because I was frustrated and was just beyond myself and couldn't figure out, how to save the world in my one paper. And she said to me, "You're losing your ability to be an advocate because it's being overwhelmed by your passion."
Wow.
And we had this really tough conversation around being able to mentally separate what I am passionate about and the ability to advocate for policy change. It's not that they're mutually exclusive, but they can't taint each other. And I was losing the ability to clearly articulate and communicate the policy issue that needed to change because I was so passionate about the people it was meant to serve, right? And that passion should drive my work for policy change, not hinder it.
That's actually incredible. I'm feeling convicted about some things going on in my head. So, okay, wow. All right, moving on. What are you learning now? What's something that you're reading or listening to?
Yeah, I am currently reading, I think it's called Good Change. But I'm always reading. I'm in a book club. I'm always looking to read something different. What I'm learning about is legal license agreements, and it's a very interesting process.
How has failure shaped your life?
Oh, daily. I am who I am because I failed. Right? Like it shapes. I truly believe in failing and failing forward and failing again. If we're not, I told a team many years ago, if we're not failing, we're not trying. And I don't ever want us to feel fear. I don't ever want us to fear the failure. I want us to embrace the failure. But we have to do better, right? If we fail, we should have learned something in the process, and therefore by knowing better, we should do better.
Facts. Okay. What have you done that I should do?
Well, I'm inclined to say I don't know all that you have done, but what I will say is just do one thing. I used the tagline, "Do it scared," earlier in the conversation. And the other piece is always just change one. Just change one habit, just change one policy, just change one practice. And in doing so, you will change one life.
Every time you finish saying something, I feel like I just attended a mini TED Talk. So, wow. I mean, all I have to say is, Dr. Serenity Wright, thank you so much for being on the show today. I know that you have blessed our listeners and the host as well. So I thank you for your time. We appreciate your spirit and all that you bring to the community for social innovation, entrepreneurship, and social justice. You're awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for making space for me. I appreciate it.
If you like this episode and if you like P Chat P, you can find and subscribe on all major podcast platforms. You can support us at pchatp.com. We hope you join us in changing the world by changing how we talk to it.
This episode was directed and produced by Marshall Fields with music and audio engineering by Chris Bergman.